Howdy mates, this is a part 2 video for today. Still over at the Myakka State Forest. However, now we're kind of getting more into some of the wetlands found here. Because as you can see, where I'm standing, it is completely water laden. And yeah, definitely a lot more sunlight through here too. The trees and other shrubs are a bit more sparse. So you'll start to see more of the herbaceous plants, whether it be your grasses, flowers, you name it. But actually out in the distance, I don't know how well you guys can see from the video, but those more white flowers out there, or with the petals, those are your well-known duck potato. And it falls under the genus of Sagittarius. That's how they're grouped. And what's actually fascinating is they produce these sort of roots that are indeed edible, but they're not true tubers like potatoes are. So even though it's called duck potato, they're not truly potatoes. So you usually will find these most likely in water-laden habitats. That's where they're most tolerant. So for the moment, I'm going to cue the video over to Sean once again.
Howdy. So one thing you might notice is that in this area in particular, there's very little growing. There's a few little soft rushes and like a few tufts of grass and one or two pickerel weeds, but this area is very sandy, very nutrient poor, which makes it great habitat for carnivorous plants. Ooh. Now this water is a little too deep for some of the pitcher plants and sundew plants that you might see in Myakka Forest, but there's two different species of bladderwort right here. We have some purple flowering bladderwort and some large leaf bladderwort. So this yellow flower right here, you see that?
Yeah, you guys, hopefully you guys can see that.
And then we also have the purple flowering. And on this guy, they have very large bladders. So when you look underwater or on my hand, each of these stems has a little bladder on it. Now, bladderwort are unusual. They're only stems and flowers. They don't have any leaves. They don't have any roots. They float in the water. And most of them live in wetlands or wet areas. And what they do is they use these bladders to trap small invertebrates, sometimes as tiny as microbes, but this guy's big enough to eat insect larvae. And so these little bladders right there will push all the water out of the bladder, make a vacuum, and then when something comes by and hits a trigger hair, it sucks the invertebrate in. And so these guys will eat all sorts of things like little mosquito larvae, amphipods, tiny fly larvae, anything small enough to fit in that bladder. And almost only eat tiny insects and very itty-bitty things living in the soil. Some actually get big enough to eat larval fish and tadpoles.
Yeah.
That's Sean with more weird water facts.
Yeah, it's quite neat to think how plants are indeed carnivorous. I feel like that always really gets people's attention as soon as they hear that word. So noticeably too, when we were walking through here, we saw some water lilies as well. And actually, Sean was pointing out to me some key ways to help identify them.
So Florida has a wide variety of water lilies. And one of the easiest ways to identify them is obviously the flowers, but if they're not flowering, you can flip over the leaves and look for coloration. So this one is most likely Nymphaea odorata, but it's really hard to tell without the flower. So I usually advise people to come back multiple times and check for flowers, and always take photos of the leaves if you're trying to identify them. But Florida has almost a dozen different water lily species native to the state, including one that likes brackish water, the dotted water lily, one that only blooms at night and is endangered, the Jasmine's water lily, or the night bloomer, and then one that's even blue, Nymphaea elegans. But most people are familiar with the white blooming water lily, Nymphaea odorata, which this most likely is.
Yep. But yeah, those you'll see very commonly, especially in these types of habitats, because they require ample amounts of water. But yeah, this is cool, you guys. Myakka State Forest is totally worth checking out, especially in Sarasota County area and getting close to Inglewood. And you do have to pay a small fee to come in here. It just helps provide any funding for the state forest. And as a piece of advice for all of you, if you ever come out to any preserve in general, you never want to pick the wildflowers or take them out of the park. That's why usually, most times, you just want to grow them on your own if you actually want them. So just keep that in mind, you guys, because from what I remember, even when I was living up in Ohio, it was unlawful to pick any native plants from a given preserve. So all right, you guys, hope you learned something of value in this video regarding carnivorous plants and water lilies that are found in Florida, and just really having a glimpse of more of the natural world that makes up Florida. So, as I said in the previous video, definitely give Sean's page and business a follow, Stock and Savvy. He's got a really good thing going on, you guys, so totally worth checking out. So, take care, enjoy your wacky Wednesday, and journey on a journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.